going on, guys? Thank you so much for joining me today on Vicious Whispers with Mark Tullius. I skipped last week. I got a little busy with a bunch of shit. Go into that later. Yeah, more me bitching and complaining. I know. But we're back this week. The short story today will be The Infidel's Prayer. Kind of goes along with my shirt, Ain't No Messiah. Yeah, that was kind of a fun one. I originally wrote that story as it was a submission for this anthology that was all religious-based stories. So I think it all had to be based off of a Bible story. So it's a retelling of a Bible story. Only this one includes spears going up people's assholes. So sorry for the spoiler, but just so you know what to expect. All right, so. Shit, what's been going on? A lot. A lot of nothing at the same time. A lot, as in, I got a lot of shit to do. I'm working on a lot of projects, not getting a lot done on them. But I have been enjoying the family more, and I realized I had a good realization this week. My wife helped me with that, pointing out that none of the shit that we do in our life is that important. Whether I write any more books, whether I write fucking 20 more, whether I write one, none of that stuff matters. Same with her job. Like, we got to pay our bills and all that kind of bullshit, of course. But all that really matters is the four of us and our family and having a good day. So if I manage to be happy, enjoy every day, like, then that's a win. If you do that for the rest of your life, like, that's awesome. That said, I still want to fucking publish a lot of books. I want to create a lot. I enjoy doing it. So it's just finding that balance. As far as why I'm overwhelmed, I just got too much shit going on, I think. So not only, that's one of the problems of being an independent author. Those podcasts, I got to film myself, I edit myself, I put it out myself. Social media, I got to do that shit myself. Marketing, I got to do that shit myself. Actually, I just hired someone that's helping with that for a little while, but then it'll be back to me. So having to figure out how to do marketing. I'm not an expert on marketing. And doing all that. I do have the help of an editor. So I have my sister, who's an awesome editor, and my father. I use them, but that's the only thing that I have help with outside of this, and cover design as well. And then there's the writing of the book, the producing the book. All that shit falls on my shoulders. I'm not complaining, but it just is a lot of work. Like yesterday, a couple days ago, I spent the entire day reworking Brightside. Got the brand new cover. I'll throw it up on the screen. It's fucking awesome. I'm really, really happy with it. Turned out great. So I'm relaunching that book, which means I had to redo the paperback, which took a little bit of time. Also redoing the ebooks, which took a little time, just updating those, putting them back up. So that was like a whole day there. Next, I was working on Try Not to Die at Grandma's House. We have a brand new cover for that. I'm pulling out all the old illustrations that were awesome. My friend Martin Kelly did those. I hate taking them out, but I want to keep the books looking consistent, have the same feel to them, so they're no longer going to be considered graphic novels at all. It'll just be interactive novels. So with no pictures at all. Maybe we'll put one or two in there, but for Grandma's House, we don't have any. So I think we're going to stay consistent. But yeah, so that took a while to have to do all that editing. Next up is finalizing Trying to Die in Brightside. So right now I'm formatting that for the print book and figuring out the audiobook, exactly how we're going to record that. Dawn is recording that now, or about to start. And then I also have to format Untold Mayhem. I just did that the other day. So I got that paperback all ready to go. The only problem with that is I don't have the artwork yet. So, but I got to figure out release dates and all that kind of shit too. Which is another thing that falls under my belt. I need to, when a book is going to come out, I got to make sure I'm doing all the pre-publication stuff ahead of time, like getting it out for reviews and all that kind of stuff. So it could be a little overwhelming. And then there's the writing side of it. Writing right now, what do I have going on? So I am working on the bridge, about halfway. I'd say a solid, let's just say a solid third of the way, halfway done with that book. It's actually on pause right now while I'm doing all this formatting and stuff. Another book that's on pause is Beyond Brightside. That first draft is already done. I'm going to have to add to it a little bit. I've been holding off on that a little while too, but I still do need to get back into that. The brain book, I've been on my nonfiction traumatic brain injury book. I've kind of put on hold. I had gotten into a little bit of a depression, researching it, talking to friends, and all that kind of shit. But thanks to the talk I had with Dr. Licata, which I mentioned last week, I'm feeling much better about my outlook on life and like on whether or not I will end up with dementia, CTE, all that kind of stuff. And I'm ready to go back into it. But then there's also all the try not to die. So I'm only popping in and out of those, so they don't take up a lot of time, but still, it is a lot on my mind, and having to switch characters and all that can be a little bit hard at sometimes. Speaking of the try not to die, one of the really cool ones, I don't know if I mentioned it last week, but my friend Nato, who was working on Try Not to Die up in the club, he really challenged me on something on how we would write it. We had to switch it up. We came up with the idea a year or two ago. The guy was going to be older, and now I decided, they all have to be young adult. So the protagonist has to be under 19. So we had to change everything up. But because of that, that offered a lot of new possibilities. And with that book, we are writing, like the first chapter is written almost entirely in text and social media posts. And when he first said it, I was like, no, dude, I said, that can't work. I didn't like the idea. But he pointed out, like, that's what people enjoy reading now. There's so many different sites that have just texts that are, stories that are told in text only. So I was like, yeah, that would be kind of cool to see what we could do. It'll be a challenge. I think it could be pretty interesting. So Trying to Die up in the club. I don't know. Shit, we were supposed to be working on it every week, but again, there have been slowdowns there as well. But that will be a fun one to do. But yeah, so that's pretty much it on the writing side. I'm meeting with my friend Michael Porman, who I've mentioned him before on here. He was the one I went to go visit up in Portland. He is dying of cancer, and he also has severe CTE. And so I went up there to interview him for the book on the brain damage book, and I will be seeing him today. And one really cool thing is I'll be seeing him again this weekend. I'm flying out to Phoenix to spend the weekend with him and 4 of my other friends that I played football with at Brown. So yeah, this should be a lot of fun to see them. 25-year reunion, kind of. Although Mike mentioned that we were going to be going out into the desert and shooting AR-15s, and I'm like, fuck, is that really a good idea for 5 guys with possible brain damage to be going out to the desert and shooting machine guns? So it might be a short story. I don't know whether or not I'm going to write it, but it does seem like the whole CTE and questionable brain is finding its way into my fiction. Not only my nonfiction, but my fiction as well. It's definitely been on my mind. I understand. I mean, shit, you can see the headlines all the time of guys getting in trouble for doing shit, and then you realize, oh, well, yeah, they had CTE. They have no control over their fucking emotions. They have no impulse control, or very little. So I will if you guys don't hear from me ever again, some shit went bad in the desert. And go find those motherfuckers. No, I think everything is going to be fine. We should have a good, fun time. Yeah, it will be great to see all those guys again. So what else is going on? And so besides that, as soon as I get back from Phoenix, I fly back on Sunday morning. Got to get in the car with my family, then we're going to drive to Vegas. We're going to spend Thanksgiving out there, but I think it's going to be pretty awesome. We got going all out on this one. We weren't going to. We were going to get an Airbnb, but I was like, it's only a little bit more money, and we could get a penthouse that's attached to the Bellagio where we could see the water show and just really enjoy it with the kids. I'm not going to gamble, so I was like, oh, all that money I would have lost gambling, fucking use it on a hotel. So that is what we're doing. I'll be there all next week. Might film from there, but probably not. We'll see. But yeah, just gonna check out some cool shows and probably go hiking at either Mount Charleston or Red Rock, something like that. I lived out there for shit, I think 5 years from 2000 to about 2005. I lived out there, so still have a lot of friends. Made a lot of other friends through jiu-jitsu and fighting. But this one might just be about family. Maybe we'll squeeze in a day of training. Not sure. Something pretty cool that just happened with jiu-jitsu related. Well, one, I got a confession. I did not stick to my plan of trying to train fucking 3 times a week at Pasadena. It just hasn't worked with. I've got, like on Monday, I think it was last Thursday, I realized I was like, okay, if I go straight home from neurofeedback, I have 3 hours to get work done. That's my only time during the whole day that I can actually get some writing done, some work done. So I could either go and do that, or I can go train and kind of irritate my body a little bit more. So I fucking went home and I worked. And it was kind of a tough decision. I felt a little bit bad about it, but I was like, no, I got to do what's right for me right now. Right now, I need to work. If I don't work, I'm going to be angry and miserable. Jiu-jitsu is awesome and it helps, but I just couldn't put it in front of work that day. I am still going to train. I'm going to try to make it in there once or twice a week. We'll see. But the cool thing is, yesterday I took my son to Gracie Baja Jiu-Jitsu, which is just down the street. It's been there for a long time. We've never gone. I've always been anti-gi. I had just never enjoyed training in a gi. That's how I first started Jiu-Jitsu. Did it for maybe a month before I jumped into, this is back like in 98. Trained in a gi for like a month or two before I made the switch to just training MMA with Boss Rutan and Marco Huas. I was at Beverly Hills Jiu-Jitsu Club. From there, I didn't train in the gi again until I met Ricardo Perez at Las Vegas Combat Club, where I was training for fighting. But again, only did some gi stuff there, not very much at all. And so yeah, I just never really enjoyed it. But I didn't want that to affect my kids. 10th Planet Youth Center, they moved. It's a little too far for us to go now. We have to do stuff that's convenient. So took my son in there yesterday to Gracie Baja, and he loved it. We signed him up. I believe my wife, my daughter, and I are all going to start training there. So that is something that would be way more convenient. I could go train in the day for an hour, come right home. I don't have to drive an hour each way to get there. And so we'll see. We'll see how my body reacts to it. In the gi should be a lot safer for my body. It's slower. That's one of the reasons I didn't like it. But I just have to change my mindset and be like, okay, all jiu-jitsu is good jiu-jitsu, and this will be really good for me getting back to fundamentals of jiu-jitsu, something that I kind of missed. Getting into 10th Planet, went more into advanced stuff. Like I was working on rubber guard when my arm bars suck, and so and that's something that Eddie always said too. He's like, hey, work on your fundamentals. You should have your fundamentals down, and not just simply work on, the 10th Planet system. So that is what we are doing. What else is going on? Been listening to a lot of Till Lindemann, the singer from Rammstein. It's probably driving my kids nuts. But yeah, for whatever reason, well, I know what the reason is. One, I love Rammstein, and I've been learning German, so I really enjoy trying to figure out what the lyrics are. And then when I do figure out the lyrics, I'm like, oh shit, maybe I shouldn't be listening to this in front of my kids. But the latest one I've been listening to is Cannibal, and that one's pretty fun. It's the first song ever like that has like a country sound to it, but it's pretty disturbing at the same time. So that is what I have on repeat. As far as other shit going on, still been doing some cold water therapy, going into the pool. Our pool hasn't been very cold lately. It's in the 60s, still cold enough. My friend Michael Porman, the guy I'm going to go visit in Scottsdale, he said his pool's at 55, so that should be fun. That'll get me back into the whole cold water thing. I do work on my breathing. I've been doing the Wim Hof breathing. I don't do it consistently. It's not something I do every day, but I do try to do it as often as I can remember. And the other thing for my brain, Haven't been doing it that much. Playing guitar. Every once in a while I'll pick it up. Played some fucking Jingle Bells and Oh Holy Night this morning for my son before he went to school. And that was about it. Hopefully tonight I'll get back into it and pick that thing back up. Try to be a little bit more consistent with it. All right, guys. If you can't tell, I was trying to speed through this thing because, yeah, like I said, I got a lot of shit to do. So I'm going to jump on that and leave you guys with this story. This is narrated by T. Quillen. It is from Twisted Reunion, which, by the way, is up to like 58 reviews. Over the last couple of weeks, it's had over 20 reviews. Almost all of them are awesome, except for two motherfuckers. There was a 1-star review and a 2-star review. And the thing with that, like, it's fine. I get it. Everyone has their own opinion. Totally understand. There's tons of shit that I don't like that everyone else likes. But in the 1-star review, like, this person was listing all the stories and why she gave it like a 1 or 2, and these were all the stories that almost everyone else fucking loved. The 5-star ratings, like, those were their favorite stories. And so I was like, I don't know. I was like, when do you realize, like, maybe it's you that's got the fucking problem? Everyone else likes it, but you don't. Or maybe you're really cool. Maybe you have a really good sense of what is good, and everyone else is wrong. That's another possibility. So, all right, before I get too upset about these motherfucking 1-star reviewers, I'm going to leave you guys with this story. All right, hope you guys enjoy it. I will hopefully see you from Vegas next week. All right, peace.
The Infidel's Prayer. Amir signed his name to his latest decree, folded it in thirds, dipped his seal in the calf's blood, and turned his wish into law. Pleased with himself, he sat the letter at the corner of his desk and turned his attention to the cheap television in the corner of his cramped, windowless room. For 2 months, he'd been trapped here behind the gates. The Americans had gotten too close. He could no longer be seen in public, no longer walk the town square to give coins to the children or to taste the Lady Cabrera's dates or cherries. A loud knock at the door sent Amir to his feet. It was only 10 o'clock, and he had given orders not to be disturbed until lunch. He didn't hide his irritation when he asked, "Who is it?" "It is I, Your Excellency, Rahim." "What is it?" "I'm sorry to disturb you, but we have a problem." "Americans?" Rahim shook his head. "It is the prisoners." Amir opened the door. "Get in here and explain yourself." Rahim lowered his head and entered the room, his bloody hands working back and forth on a filthy handkerchief. He raised his eyes, looking more like a lamb than the bull of a man he was. "They won't bow." "What?" "I'm sorry, Your Excellency, but I cannot bend their will. They say they will not be broken." "You disappoint me, Rahim. They are but men, barely more than boys. They're not even military. They're infidel." "Yes, I understand, but they will not budge, and the crowd grows by the minute." "You can't handle it?" Rahim straightened to attention, his massive forearms flexing as he clenched his scarred fists. "I can handle it, but my approach may not be as Your Excellency wishes, especially with nearly the entire town bearing witness." Amir pointed to the door. "Go and do as you must." "I have your permission?" "You have my blessing." Once Rahim left the room, Amir moved to the 3 computer monitors lining the back wall. The crowd gathered around the eastern court was the largest he'd seen. They'd come to witness the young men who'd openly opposed Amir. Soon they would discover their fate. That was good. Even the most devoted follower needed a reminder. Amir admired himself in the full-length mirror. He was the image of excellence, from his perfectly creased beret to his shining black boots. To complete his outfit, Amir removed his sheathed sword from the gilded display case, attached it to his belt, and headed for the door. To hell with the Americans. These people, his people, needed to see his face. Just as he pulled open the door and stepped into the hallway, A loud cheer erupted. He glanced back at the monitors and could see nothing but the maniacal crowd jumping up and down. He hurried to his desk, took out his Browning 9mm and placed it in its holster. Amir started down the hallway and saw red footprints marking the carpet. Not only had Rahim proved to be ineffectual, he'd been careless and disrespectful, bringing the blood of infidels into Amir's home. The crowd roared again as Amir approached the large wooden doors which led to the eastern court. Then, silence. Slowly, he opened the door. Rahim rushed to Amir's side, his open knuckles dripping blood on the sand. "Still nothing." Rahim used the back of his sleeve to wipe the sweat off his creased forehead. "I don't know what's wrong." Amir looked at the trail of blood Rahim had dragged in from the outer gates. He said, "Take me there." Rahim nodded and led Amir down the path. As they crossed through the gates, the townspeople looked down on them from both sides. A chain-link fence kept them from getting too close to Amir's greatness. The short path opened onto the eastern court, a giant circle of sand surrounded by the quiet crowd. On the far side of a statue of Amir's father, the man the people had once adored, were 3 young men. Each was tied to a stake 10 feet apart. When they'd been brought in the day before, their facial resemblance made it clear that they were brothers. Now they were unrecognizable, any familial features obliterated under Rahim's heavy hands. "These men won't bow because they aren't able to," Amir said. "Untie them and surely they will recognize me." Rahim shook his head. "They refuse, Your Excellency. Perhaps they will reconsider if you address them." Amir wondered who should replace Rahim. "Move aside and watch how it is done." Amir strode forward, stopped a few feet in front of the man on the left, the eldest and hopefully the wisest of the brothers. Loud enough for the entire crowd to hear, Amir asked, "What is your name, my son?" "I am my father's son," the stick-thin man with the mangled face said. His smile revealed a mouthful of shattered teeth. "I am Michael Marash." Amir slapped him across his cheek, the crack echoing across the court. "Do you not know who I am?" Michael acted as if he hadn't felt the blow. "I know what you are. The same as me and my brothers. Mortal." Amir unsheathed the sword, placed its point to Michael's chin before the man could utter another sacrilegious word. "You are as ignorant as you are brave, but neither will serve you in my court." Amir let the tip of the sword drag across Michael's chest, spilling new blood. "Pray your brothers have more sense." The next brother, whose teeth and a bloodied piece of his ear glistened in the sand, looked Amir in the eyes, not once glancing at the sword in his hand. "And what is your name?" Amir asked. "Zechariah." "You look brighter than your brother," Amir said, even though he couldn't make out much with the purple swelling. "Would you like for this to end?" "Very much." "Good." Amir turned to the crowd. "Did you hear that? This young man would like for this to end. He is a man of reason. He will bow down to me." The crowd cheered, but not nearly as loudly as they had when Rahim had been working with the brothers. "You misunderstand," Zechariah said. "I bow to no man." Amir whirled around and drove the sword through the insolent man's thigh. Zechariah's cry was drowned out by the crowd. Amir stuck his face an inch from Zechariah's. "You want to rethink that? I have all day." Zechariah shook his head, grimaced when Amir pulled the sword out and shoved it through the other thigh. Another cry. "Pathetic fools." Amir sheathed his sword. The first 2 brothers groaned and wailed as Amir walked to the third man. "And you?" he said to the big-bellied brother. "What is your name?" "Hassan." Amir took the 9mm from his holster and made sure Hassan saw it. I want you to listen closely. You can save your life and the lives of your brothers. Don't you want to? We already saved, sir. You can be too if... The blast of the gun cut the sentence short. He splintered Hassan's left kneecap. I can be saved? Amir fired a round into the other knee, and then returned to Rahim, who looked as if he wanted to say something, but wisely remained quiet. Amir ordered him to ready the spears, and screamed at him to hurry when Rahim hesitated. The crowd went wild as the soldiers trudged out the 6-foot-long spears and inserted them into metal holders beside each stake. When each of the glistening spears was in place, Amir raised his hand to signal for silence. Speaking to the crowd, Amir said, I do not ask much of my people, but I will not tolerate disrespect. Still, as a kind and just ruler, I will give them one last chance. Amir then asked the brothers, Will you bow? Michael said, You can hurt us now, torture us every single second for the rest of our days, but it will end. And we will be welcomed into God's arms and an eternity of bliss. So no, we will not bear false witness. Amir signaled his soldiers to proceed. He shouted to the crowd, I cannot help those who refuse my hand. The soldiers untied Michael and his brothers from the stakes, leaving their arms bound. Michael said, We are not trying to be disrespectful, but we cannot bow to a golden idol. Raise them, Amir shouted. Raise them high. 4 soldiers surrounded each of the brothers and hefted the men onto their shoulders. Speaking over the cheering crowd, Michael said, We believe in one God. His voice was soon drowned in the cheers as the soldiers pressed them high into the air, where they hovered over the spears. The brothers prayed as one. The Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. Impale them, Amir screamed. The soldiers dropped the young men, the schlop of spears tearing through fabric and flesh as the brothers cried to their heaven. The crowd crowed their approval as the young men slowly slid down the poles. Amir was used to men screaming, but not like this, as if they were in the chorus of the damned. All they had to do was bend to him. Michael was more than halfway down the pole, only a few feet of blood-slicked steel sticking out below him. Amir stepped to Michael's feet, dangling over the ground. The skin over Michael's upper chest stretched a few inches up the spear, pointing to the sky. All 3 of the screaming brothers reached the blood-soaked sand at nearly the same moment. Zachariah's spear had ripped through the side of his neck, a fountain of red flowing on both sides of the steel. Hassan, the shortest of the 3, hadn't been so lucky, but even he continued to sing despite the spear exiting his right eye socket. The crowd stopped cheering, and the entire court went silent except for the brothers' everlasting, "Ah!" As if they had planned it, the 3 men finished their scream. Amen! Amir turned, found Rahim standing wide-eyed next to the statue of Amir's father. Lower the spears, Amir ordered. Rahim hurried to the switch. The gears grated beneath the ground and the spears tilted toward the statue. Each of the brothers was now positioned to show Amir's father's statue the respect it demanded. But the crowd did not cheer. As the blood pooled beneath him, Michael turned his head to the side and looked at Amir. We are not bending for you. We are not bending for you. Only God. Rahim ran to Amir's side and whispered, This shouldn't be, Your Excellency. These men are not natural. Amir's fury at his first-in-charge blazed in his eyes. The man was no better than a superstitious little girl. The spears are holding them together. They will bleed out like everyone else. None has lasted this long, Rahim said. They should be dead. Amir backhanded Rahim across the face, stunned the man into silence. "And they will be!" To the soldiers, he yelled. "Remove the bodies and stack them here. The rest of you, bring in the wood." The crowd came alive and cheered the soldiers as they ripped each of the brothers off the spears and sat them back to back a few feet from Amir. Wheelbarrows full of wood dumped their contents in a massive circle around the men. The frenzied crowd continued by tossing branches, rags, and other items over the fence. This would be a fire like no other, an example of the fire that the irreverent infidels would spend eternity in. Michael took Amir's attention away from his people. "God forgives you." Amir didn't acknowledge the blasphemous remark, simply strode to the edge of the court. He pulled Rahim to him and said, "Douse them in gasoline." Rahim picked up the can by the entrance and walked to the brothers as branches continued to rain down. He said something to the men as he poured the liquid on them, but Amir could not hear the words over the chanting crowd. He didn't need to. Rahim had already proven what kind of man he was that day, but as long as the crowd couldn't hear it, his words didn't matter. Rahim emptied the can. Amir beckoned a soldier to bring him a lit torch. When no more liquid came out of the container, Amir tossed the torch, and the fire exploded, flames 50 feet high. The intense heat drove Amir and the crowd back from the pit. On the outskirts of the blaze, Rahim's body writhed until he was nothing but charred debris for the other soldiers to consider. A voice from above shouted, "The statue!" Amir hoped it was a mirage, a trick of the flames playing on his eyes. The face of his father's statue was melting. It looked like tears. "It's titanium," he said, wondering if the sculpture had lied. "It can't melt." But the tears continued to drip down his father's cheeks. Amir ordered his men to extinguish the fire. Buckets of water sizzled over the flames when the singing began. The song was an infidel's prayer. "Stop that!" Amir shouted at the crowd, disgusted that anyone would dare cross his decree. The flames continued to grow, and the singing grew louder. Amir turned to his nearest soldier and said, "Take all the men you need and find those who are singing. Toss them into the pit." The soldier stood staring at the fire and pointed. "From in there. There, in there." Amir pushed the confused soldier away. He shielded his face from the bright white heat. The statue was gone, a silver puddle spreading across the sand. The song continued, growing louder as 3 shapes appeared. Amir yelled to his men, "They're demons! Send them back to hell!" Most of the soldiers ran. Those who stayed threw down their weapons. Amir fired a round into the closest coward's head. "Kill them!" Amir yelled, aiming his pistol at the brothers in the flames. He fired. The round struck Michael's forehead. Amir fired again and again, emptying the gun into the flames. He threw the useless pistol at the figures and pulled his sword, waving it in front of him. Stay back, devils! Go back to the depths of hell, please!" Amir tripped and scooted backwards on the sand. "I am sorry," he said to the fire. "Forgive me, please, please!" He pulled himself forward and bowed his head. He recited the infidel's prayer. Each word he had banned from his city. He prayed with all his heart and begged the one God to have mercy on his soul. When he opened his eyes, he saw Rahim's charred body before him. He saw inside the flames. The brothers weren't alive. They weren't singing. They were dead. Amir looked at the ring of soldiers, realizing how crazy he probably seemed. He wiped the tears from his face and saw his men training their weapons upon his chest.